but really looking forward to today's program because we have a conservation officer from the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources for our area here in Rice County, Luke Belgard, in studio. Luke, thanks for coming in.
Morning, Gordy.
I appreciate it very much. This is your first radio show, I understand.
Yeah, for more than more than just a couple minute segment, I guess.
Well, we're looking forward to it. You can text in those questions if you have a question at 507-838-5233, and hopefully we'll get a lot of questions. That's what I'm hoping for today. 507-838-5233. Let's get a little of your background, Luke. How long have you been with the DNR?
I've been a conservation officer for just about 4 years now. Before that, I spent 8 years as a police officer. So I've been in law enforcement for 12 years now.
So you were a police officer before you went to the DNR?
Yeah. It's a good background to have, good experience to bring into this field, I guess. So.
And you decided to do this because?
Well, most of us kind of get into it because we all are hunters and fishermen and enjoy the outdoors, and so it's kind of a good way to incorporate some of that into your job, I guess.
And it probably isn't quite as dangerous as being well, you're still a law enforcement official, but you know what I'm saying.
Right. Well, there's, you can look at it a couple of different ways. I mean, some of the stuff, a lot of the contacts we're making now are pretty friendly contacts for the most part. However, most of the time we're working on our own, so we don't have backup available to us all the time. Whereas if when I was a police officer, if you called for backup, you had guys coming your way pretty quickly, where now you don't. So there's, I guess, pros and cons both ways when you look at it that way.
So I'm guessing you decided after you got done with school, you decided on a career. You thought you wanted to go into law enforcement, and then while you were in law enforcement, you thought, I probably should have gone to become a conservation officer.
Well, I kind of wanted this job, back when I got into the field. It's a hard job to get into. A lot of times, like when I applied, there was 800 plus applicants.
Wow.
For I think they hired 12 out of our academy. So there's a lot of competition for it. So having a law enforcement background is definitely a way to get yourself noticed, I guess, above that large pool of applicants. Try to stand out a little bit.
Where were you an officer?
In St. Peter.
Okay. Home of the Saints.
Yep.
We do have a question here. I don't know if we're going to have enough time to get to it, but it says, when fishing from shore, can I put my fish in a bucket of water to take home?
You can put them in a bucket of water. However, you cannot transport a fish alive. So to transport it home, you would have to dump the water out, because you cannot have that fish in enough water to keep it alive when transporting it.
Okay.
And the reason for that is it's illegal to take fish from one lake and put them in another lake. So, you could be on shore, have your pail of water there, throw your fish in there. However, that water would need to be dumped so that those fish could not be transplanted into another lake or something of that sort.
Do you find this often?
Sometimes it's not real common, but yeah, just the way the law reads is that fish cannot be transported in enough water to keep them alive.
Yeah, and I want to emphasize, and you probably wouldn't mind emphasizing as well, that you don't make the laws, you just enforce the laws.
That's correct, yeah, and it's something that we're given, and it's a job that we do, and so we're given the laws that we're not choosing the laws that we enforce. There's a large set of laws that we're required to enforce. So.
Yeah, I bet there are times when you scratch your head just like the rest of us at some laws.
Well, there's a lot of laws, especially some of the DNR stuff that change so much. It's hard to keep up with, and it's always changing, and you got to know what's going on before you go out and do those activities.
All right, we're going to visit more with Luke Belgard, DNR Conservation Officer for our area, and that's how simple it is. Just text in your question, 507-838-5233. We will be sure to ask the officer your question.
State, so we can go anywhere in the state and work, but they've got us kind of spread out throughout the state. Faribault was one workstation which covers Rice County, so I live in Faribault, and supposed to just be kind of covering Rice County, but we go where the work is, and when there's vacant areas, obviously we gotta help out there too to cover stations that are vacant. And
Sure.
commonly do work details in the heavily worked, or the heavily recreated areas, you know, Lake of the Woods and the Lacs are pretty common areas. Red Lake in the winter time is very busy, so we'll go do different details up in those areas too.
I'm gonna guess there's plenty
work is.
Yeah, there's plenty of work right here in Rice County.
There is. This is a very busy area. A lot of lakes. You got a lot of lakes and fishing in your station. There's plenty to do year round, because that's a year round job, where, you know, the hunting and stuff like that is primarily just a few months in the fall, but fishing takes place, you know, pretty much 365. So there's always something to do.
Yeah. Well, there's good hunting around here too.
Sure. The deer population seems to be pretty good in this area, I think, and turkeys have been, you know, just exploding, you know, kind of statewide almost, or at least in the areas where we hunt them. So that's kind of a success story, I guess, as far as that goes. But a lot of good turkey hunting around here. Duck hunting always seems to be a good area for duck hunting. When you got a lot of water, there's ducks moving through, so it's always a good thing in the fall too.
You're a young man, so you wouldn't remember this, but when I was growing up, the deer were very thin.
Yeah, I've heard. I know my dad's even told me stories where there wasn't a deer season, and so it's hopefully on the rise, and I don't think that's going to be an issue anytime soon. But try to keep that population to where we can have a huntable population and keep up with that sport.
And on the other side of things, I remember when I was a kid, pheasants were really thick. I grew up in Spring Valley, I was telling you earlier. A lot of pheasants around there then. There aren't that many now.
Right. You know, there's still birds out there to be had. You know, some of it is, you know, you gotta get out there and get in the areas where the birds are. You know, it's not always just walking down a nice trail and having birds going everywhere. So there's still some around. There has been, you know, with there's some loss of habitat there where the population has dropped a bit, and in certain areas, but in some areas it's good too. So hopefully there's going to be some management to try to see what we can do about that population.
Again, that phone number, or excuse me, the number to text your question to is 507-838-5233, and we will ask the DNR Conservation Officer your question. I know there are a couple of things you wanted to touch on today, Luke, and one of them is ATV safety, the tragedies that have occurred here in the last month of young people dying while operating ATVs.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely been some pretty bad accidents here this spring, involving youth and youth that are, you know, real young, you know, under 10 years of age. So that's a sad thing. You know, really the important part, I guess, to note is that, yeah, ATVs, they're fun. It's a good time to get out there and ride them, but they're very powerful machines, and they're probably too powerful for youth of that age to be operating. They just can't handle the power that's on them, and they don't have the strength or I guess the riding ability to be able to handle the machines, and rollovers can happen very easily. You know, these machines are very top heavy, and you get in the wrong type of terrain, and that machine can roll over pretty easily.
And what's the law on that? What's the age?
Well,
is there an age limit?
If you're under 10, you are not allowed to operate only on public property, or excuse me, only on private property, and under the supervision of an adult. There's another requirement that says that you must fit the machine, so a youth would have to obviously be able to reach the handlebars, operate the throttle and brake without any problem. You know, their hands would have to be at the size where they can grip the brake and be able to operate it safely. They would also have to be able to reach the foot pedals to be able to operate those controls as well. One of the problems, I think, with a lot of youth is, you know, because they are smaller, when turning, you know, you have to be able to turn and be able to reach those handlebars.
Right.
And when you're turning, obviously one side gets longer than the other, and their arms just aren't long enough to make that turn. And if you look in our ATV regulations too, there's everything's listed there as far as what they have to be able to do before they can legally operate that machine. And parental supervision too. They have to be under parental supervision. So.
But there was the tragic story of a 5-year-old I know who lost their life. That's perfectly legal. A 5-year-old can operate an ATV as long as it's on their parents' property or private property.
I'd find it hard to believe that there's any 5-year-old that can probably fit a machine in that way that I was talking about. It'd have to be a pretty good-sized kid, I guess, to be able to do that. So.
And they do have these kiddie ATVs, right?
Right. There are, if they are able to operate those smaller ones too on private property, they'd be able to do that as well.
Are you required to wear a helmet?
If you're under 18 and you're operating on any public lands, you are required to wear a helmet. On private land, you would not be required to wear a helmet, but obviously we would advise you to be wearing a helmet because that can obviously save your life.
Yeah. I do have a question here texted in. Can a UTV such as a Polaris Ranger be ridden on ATV trails?
It would depend on the trail. Here in southern Minnesota, we don't have really any ATV trails that I'm aware of. So there's two different types of ATVs. There's a Class 1 and a Class 2. It really has to do with the width of the machine. If the width is under 50 inches, it would be a Class 1, and UTV or the Class 2 ATV that the text is talking about there, anything 50 inches and above. Generally, you'll look at the Class 1s are the saddle style with the handlebars, where you would straddle the seat and there could be a passenger behind you. And the Class 2s are the kind of the side-by-side that are operated with the steering wheel. So if you get up north into the state forest trails and that sort of thing, you would have to read the signage and make sure that those trails are authorized for that type of machine.
You see a lot of them out?
Yeah, they're getting to be more and more popular. There's quite a few of them out. Here in the southern part of the state where we don't have a lot of trails, as far as ditch riding goes, there is some confusion because the Class 1s, the saddle style ATV, you're allowed to operate in the ditch, and you would not be allowed to operate on a county road. However, the Class 2s is just the opposite. The Class 2s are not allowed to be operated in the ditch, but they are allowed to be operated on the county road. So make sure you know what type of machine you have and know what those regulations are before you go out.
Do I get those when I buy the machine?
Your dealer might have them. The DNR prints the regulations every year. They're free. Most dealerships you go to probably has a stack of them somewhere. You can go online to mndnr.gov and there's a electronic version of this, and everything you need to know is going to be in that book, and that book has ATV laws, also off-highway motorcycle laws, your dirt bikes and such, and any type of off-road vehicle laws are going to be in that book.
Again, the phone number to text your question to is 507-838-5233. We've got a couple of great questions there. 507-838-5233. I don't know if you heard about the young guys up north who got their ATV stuck in a barbed wire fence. They hop off the ATV. Of course, it's too heavy for them to get off the fence. And they ended up spending the night at a cabin 7 miles away from where the ATV was. Obviously, their parents, a lot of people were very concerned about their safety. They were found okay. They were smart enough young lads to get to a cabin,
Yeah, I guess I didn't hear about that one, but the most important thing is make sure you know where you're going to be riding. It's always good to do some research ahead of time. Looks like these guys had a pretty good idea that cabin was going to be there and were able to get themselves to safety, but know where you're going to be at, in case there is, even if you just have a simple breakdown on a trail.
Well, at night, in the woods, even if you know the woods real well, that's tough.
Right, so if you know that there's an area like that you can get to ahead of time, it's going to save you a lot of hassle than trying to figure it out when it happens.
And one of the other things you wanted to touch on today was burning permits. I didn't even think about that when I was preparing for the show.
Yeah, springtime is a pretty popular time to be burning. I think probably the most common misconception is that people can burn garbage. That's not the case. You know, it's been done for years and years. The only thing that you're able to burn legally is vegetative material. So it would be, you know, your brush, your grass, your leaves, firewood, that sort of thing. And a lot of people tell me, is that law just come into play? And it's like, no, it's been in place for 30 years or more now. So burning garbage is not legal. So it's got to be vegetative material, some sort of plant material is the only thing that you'd be able to burn.
You're talking anywhere.
Anywhere in the state, yep. And I'm talking about state laws here, which is what we enforce. If you live in a city or your local counties, they can actually restrict some of that further if they choose to with a local ordinance. So make sure you check on that too locally to make sure there isn't any restrictions as far as burning leaves or grass from a local level.
I didn't know that either. I always thought you could burn garbage in the country.
No, it's been since the 1980s. It's been illegal. So it's good that people need to know that it is illegal and it can be cited. And it's just when you burn some of that, you get that nasty stuff up in the air, and it's not good to breathe, and it's not good for the environment. And so that's got to go to a landfill.
Fishing openers just around the corner.
Yeah, it's coming up here pretty quick. It's not the Mother's Day weekend this year. It's first year for that.
How cool is that?
Yeah, so it'll be maybe people will be able to get out a little bit more. But it's coming up, second weekend in May, and be the 14th this year.
Yep.
instead of Mother's Day. So probably see maybe, depending on the weather, it's always a factor, but due to the fact it's not on Mother's Day weekend, we probably see a lot more boats out there this year.
There a lot of pressure on lakes here in Rice County?
Yeah, the lakes around here are very busy. Obviously local people like to get out and about too, but I think we're close enough to the metro area where a lot of people will come down from that area too, make the drive down I-35 and hit up our lakes, because there's some good fishing around here in Rice County.
I did see on the DNR website that they were looking for, what was it, boat inspectors? Intern boat inspectors?
Yeah, a lot of that is for invasive species laws. They will have people hired throughout the summer to man the public accesses to make sure you're draining your water and pulling your weeds off your boat. Obviously we do that too. It's becoming more and more part of our duties, I guess, to deal with the invasive species stuff, and it's not going away. So want to remind people, make sure all the water that is, when you come off the lake, you got to drain all the water out of your boat, whether it's just pulling your drain plug, draining your live wells, any bait buckets, or anything that you have in your boat that contains water. That's all got to be drained at the public access before you can leave, along with any weeds or any aquatic vegetation that may be stuck to your boat or trailer. That's got to also be removed before you leave the public access.
So take a thorough look of that boat.
Yep, get in there and get down on your hands and knees a little bit, make sure, especially when the weeds start to get thick, those weeds can kind of hide in some certain spots. If you got rollers or bunks on your trailer, a lot of times that's a good spot for weeds to collect. So make sure you get a good look under there and pull anything out that might be stuck to your boat or your trailer.
Do we have a problem in Rice County with?
There's a few invasives. We haven't seen any zebra mussels, which is good. We want to keep it that way, so that's the big part about the water drainage. We do have some milfoil. A lot of milfoil is milfoil infested lakes in the area. Shields Lake, I think just last year milfoil was found on, so that was one that didn't have it and now does. And that stuff gets transported, by boats and stuff. That's the the main reason people jumping from lake to lake, and that's why it's very important, and especially with milfoil, because a small little chunk, you know, maybe an inch or two long, getting into uninfested water can actually cause a new infestation. So really making sure you get that stuff out of there is very important.
That's incredible. It's like creeping Charlie in my yard.
Yeah, yeah, and it grows fast too, and yeah, and it gets so thick that it'll choke out fish habitat, and yeah, obviously as far as your boating and stuff goes, that we all know how that affects your boating. Trying to get through some of those areas, you get stuck or you get that stuff clogged in your motor. So really make sure you're watching, making sure you're not transporting that stuff from lake to lake.
507-838-5233 is the number to text your question for Luke Belgard, DNR Minnesota Conservation Officer right here in Rice County. I did want to touch on, before I let you go, of course, the Turn-In Poachers Hotline, something that everybody should probably have in their phones. You never know when you might see it happening.
Yeah, you know, if you get any of our regulations book, it's just an 800 number. It's 1-800-652-9093. That's a 24-hour line. It should be statewide. So if you want to report a violation, call that number. Like you said, everybody with these days with cell phones being out and about, it's a great way to, if you see a violation, to call it in. You know, like I said, I'm one guy for the whole county, and I need the public's eyes out there. So don't hesitate to call in those violations. Also, if you have a question, I guess, regarding the law or anything DNR related, our general info line is 888-MINN-DNR, or mndnr.gov is our website, and there's a lot of good information on there too.
Yeah, no question about that. Very nice website there from the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. So again, you want to repeat those phone numbers for us?
Yep, it's going to be the tip line 800-652-9093, and MINN 1-888-MINN-DNR is the general information line.
Would you recommend they take a picture of what I'm saying? I mean, every cell phone these days has a camera.
You know, anything you can get to help us out is gonna be beneficial.
But I would recommend not confronting whoever it is.
Yeah, you don't want to get yourself in a situation where it's going to be unsafe. So call it in. You know, if you can get a license plate number of a vehicle that you suspect the violators are using, that's huge for us. We can always follow up with that. You know, it's going to be up to you if you decide you want to get a picture, or you can. That's certainly helpful too. But yeah, don't put yourself in a position where it's going to be unsafe for you by confronting somebody. So
we don't
make
have
sure you
much
call it in.
Problem with this here locally, do we? Is there a lot of poaching going on in Rice County?
There's probably more than you think. I mean, obviously the fall is probably our busiest time, and there's a lot of stuff going on with deer season and the hunting seasons. But there are some fishing violations that occur too. So if you see it, call it in so that I can be aware of it.
All right. So again, folks, be safe. You should touch a little bit on boating safety before I let you go.
Yep, get your life jackets. Everybody in the boat has to have a life jacket. We encourage you to wear them. Obviously, legally, you're not required to wear them unless you're a youth. But even adults, it doesn't do you a lot of good if you go in the lake and you're not wearing it. So it's a good idea to wear them. Also, all boats over 16 feet must have a throwable life preserver as well. And then your boats need your fire extinguisher in case there's a fire and that sort of thing. So safety equipment's very important with boating. Can't stress enough, alcohol involved with boating. It's a big problem. It causes a lot of careless operation out there. Here in Rice County, we do have a lot of lakes, but we don't have a lot of large lakes. So during the busy times, we've got a lot of boats in a small area sometimes. So alcohol is going to cloud your judgment, and it's going to cause something bad to happen. So the two just don't mix.
You have a question here. Are kayaks required to be registered watercraft?
If they are over 10 feet in length, 10 feet or over, they would need a registration. Yep, kayaks or canoes. Or any kayak or canoe that has a motor attached to it would also need a registration, even if it falls under 10 feet.
All right. Nice, quick answer. I love that, Luke. You're a natural for this.
Okay, well, appreciate that.
That's what people want. I mean, they just want a quick answer, right?
Yeah, I mean,
no long dissertation. I love that.
That one's pretty simple.
I love it. Hopefully we can do this again sometime.
Yeah, I'd love to come back, so
And we'll
appreciate it.
Sheriff on here in the next week or so with the fishing opener coming up with his water patrol folks. Maybe you can join us then.
Yeah, sure. Just let me know when it is, and yeah, they do a great job too. They're always out and about there, so keeping everybody safe. I think that's part of the reason why we haven't had a fatal here in Rice County as far as boating
Knock
goes.
on that wood there.
Yeah, exactly. We don't wanna see that. And they're out there a lot and really do a good job.
Yeah. In fact, I was looking for some boating information, and the newest year of stats on the DNR's website was 2014, which you find that all the time. In today's world of computers, they're a couple of years removed. But anyway, thanks for coming in, Luke.
You bet. Thanks.
Appreciate it very much. And hopefully we can do that again sometime in the future. Tomorrow we'll talk about the Raise the Roof Habitat for Humanity fundraiser coming up on Sunday. Thanks to all those folks for texting in their questions. You're in tune to KDHL AM Faribault.